Lyman Wisner and Sunnyside Farm.
Iowa contains 36 million acres, 25 million of which were originally prairie. 4 million acres of this were native wetlands that included prairie potholes, marshes, natural lakes, and river bottoms. European settlement drastically changed the prairie ecosystem. Less than 30,000 acres of native prairie remain. In addition, straightening of creeks into drainage ditches began in 1880 and eliminated 95% of the native prairie pothole wetlands. By 1930, 95% of the state's land had been converted to farmland. All in all, only 7% of Iowa's native landscape remains, splintered by roads and urbanization. For all his thousands of acres of land, for all his banking interests, for all his homes, and for all his millions of dollars of wealth, Lyman Wisner still remains a shadowy figure in Iowa Falls history. Perhaps it's because he moved to Eldora, or perhaps it's because he wasn't a huge philanthropist in Iowa Falls the way that Eugene Ellsworth was. Maybe it's because his estate was dispersed long ago without a trace in Iowa Falls other than his large memorial in Union Cemetery. As a banker, Wisner's life was shaped by the Civil War, the economy, and the resulting interest rates of his time. To whom it may concern, this is to certify that the bearer, E.S. Ellsworth, whose signature is heretofore written and genuine, has my number 8384 on Union National Bank, Chicago, for $100, has my number 8385 on Union National Bank, Chicago, for $100, and has my number 8386 on Union National Bank, Chicago, for $50. Has my number 8387 on Union National Bank, Chicago, for $50, in all $300. He deserves the honor necessary to have the said drafts paid, and all those favoring him with due respect and honoring the said drafts will confer a favor to him as well as on myself. L. F. Wisner. Wisner's Bank was on the south side of Washington Avenue in Iowa Falls in 1865. He lived at 604 Main Street in Iowa Falls. Wisner acquired the original Sunnyside Farm when the doctor who owned it allowed him to pay the taxes. Soon, Wisner owned the farm. He expanded it from there with thousands of head of cattle raised in Franklin County and moved to Sunnyside to be fed out and shipped east by train car. There are many questions about the life of Lyman Wisner that may always remain unanswered. How was he able to amass such a large fortune, and what drove him? How did he become such a shrewd manager? Curiously, why is he buried alone with his in-laws in Iowa Falls while the rest of his family is buried in Eldora? Why did his widow leave her new home to her longtime housekeeper in her will? And why did the housekeeper sell the home 4 months later? The biggest question of all is what exactly happened the day that Lyman Wisner was killed by his son in what is described as a careless hunting accident. At any rate, all that remains in Iowa Falls is the Wisner Memorial Obelisk in Union Cemetery, which stands 31 feet high, weighs 40 tons, and cost $10,000 in 1890. It stands in the center of the old cemetery. George Wisner inherited his father's estate and his bank presidency at the Hardin County Savings Bank. George died of kidney failure only 4 years later at age 28. Sunnyside was inherited by George's widow and 2 young infant children, both under 3 years of age. The farm and assets were looked after by a series of attorneys and 2 stepfathers. None of them had the management ability of Lyman Wisner, and the entire estate disappeared in a few years. Like Andrew Carnegie and John Rockefeller before him, Lyman Wisner started out in life penniless. He was born in Orange County, New York, the son of farmer John Wisner, where he learned hard work and frugality. With ambition, initiative, and a sense of adventure, Lyman Wisner worked his way west as a peddler, selling merchandise to the settlers who needed it. He ended up in Hardin County, Iowa. There was tremendous opportunity in Iowa in the period leading up to the Civil War, during the war, and after the war itself to sell to the new homesteaders. There was tremendous opportunity for a young man who understood finance, how to get funds, and how to loan them out. While operating a store in Iowa Falls, Wisner took a wagon south and sold goods to the Union troops. Wisner's experience with merchandising and the small fortune he was amassing allowed him to start Iowa Falls' first bank on the south side of Washington Avenue. He also began to acquire a good deal of land. Around this time, he also met and married Julia Hatch, who was the daughter of the hotel owner where Wisner stayed when he first came to Iowa Falls. There were very few banking regulations in those days. Therefore, to be a banker required that a person have a good, solid reputation and a knowledge of how to handle funds and to do business honestly. Wisner decided to move to Eldora, where the new Hardin County Savings Bank was a going concern. He also wished to be near the courthouse. Wisner was a millionaire with vast holdings, but it came to an end with an accidental gunshot. After the accident that killed his father, George, who was always in poor health, became president of the Hardin County Savings Bank and a benefactor of Eldora. Although George did many wonderful things, he only outlived his father about 4 years. George married the daughter of his father's enemy in business and had 2 young children at the time of his death, both under 3 years of age. Fanny Gilman Wisner and her 2 young children inherited the bulk of the vast Wisner estate. Life lost its meaning for Julia Wisner upon her son's untimely death, and she only survived him by 3 months. C.C. Gilman, a railroad and business magnate in Eldora, was a natural opponent of Lyman Wisner. He was George Wisner's father-in-law. As a benefactor of Eldora, George Wisner had built the Wisner Opera House, and its opening night event was the funeral of George Wisner in 1893. The Opera House later burned to the ground. The Wisner Opera House was located directly east of the Hardin County Courthouse. George Wisner is buried in Eldora City Cemetery in the family plot. Within about 4 years, the entire immediate family of Lyman Wisner was gone. The vast Wisner estate was about to be completely dispersed. No one person had the ability to manage such a huge and growing estate, except Lyman Wisner, and he had died in 1889. Lyman Wisner is buried with his in-laws in the Union Cemetery in Iowa Falls. Lyman and Julia Wisner were building a house on South Washington Street in Eldora. Because of their deaths, Julia only lived in the house less than 2 years. Today it is the Hardin County Historical Home. The Wisner children were too young to remember their father or their grandmother. They only remember their mother, their 2 stepfathers, and their maternal grandparents, the Gilmans. They were looked after by a series of attorneys and wards to protect their vast fortune. Lyman Wisner was named after his paternal and maternal grandparents. He was well educated in various colleges and universities and served honorably in World War I. He spent most of his life supervising his business interests in Eldora. The Wisner family has a strong heritage of military service. Lois Wisner Bloomkist is the only granddaughter of Lyman Wisner. All of Lyman Wisner's living descendants are through her. Lyman Wisner has no living descendants who bear the Wisner surname. Betty Bloomkist Griffith is Lois Wisner Bloomkist's daughter and Lyman Wisner's great-granddaughter. All of Lyman Wisner's living descendants are through her. They bear the surname Griffith. Gordon Hatch Wisner is the only great-grandson of Lyman Wisner and the last descendant of Lyman Wisner to bear the surname Wisner. He served in World War II and Korea and died at age 33. He is buried in Eldora City Cemetery.